Hey, hello. Welcome to episode number 110 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choit. What's up? If you are new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians and other artists about their lives and careers. The conversation is casual, but I also ask everyone to highlight the people they love, who they admire, who influenced them, inspired them, and supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's peoplewelovepodcast.com, and the Instagram handle is at peoplewelovepodcast. And you can find me on Instagram as well, at Adam Choit, if you want to follow me. And it's the same on Twitter, at Adam Choit. And please remember to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And of course, 5-star positive reviews on iTunes, Apple Podcasts are greatly appreciated as well. So, today's guest is comedian Ben Herwitz. Originally from just outside San Francisco, Ben grew up an only child whose main focuses in life were sports and academics. He wishes he would have been more involved in creative endeavors as a youngster and read more. But throughout his childhood, one particular late-night host made a big impact on Ben, the one and only Conan O'Brien. We talk Conan, we talk psychology, and of course we talk Ben's journey into stand-up comedy and beyond. Let's just get started. Here's Ben Herwitz. Okay, so it's good to see you today, Ben Herwitz. Thank you for joining me on Zoom here.
Thanks for having me, man. I feel like I'm prepared. I've been listening.
Oh yeah, not everyone does that, and that's okay. I have zero expectations. I think my expectations have gotten less over the years for I don't know, the world, myself, people, and that's helped me. That's benefited me. Managing expectations, I guess what I'm saying. Maybe not lessening, managing them.
No, absolutely. I think, I don't know who said this, probably, hopefully a psychologist. The key, one of the easiest ways to be happy is to have low expectations.
Yeah. That seems sad though.
Well, it's a little depressing, but I think not like saying, oh, I give up, but like having legitimately low expectations probably does lead to a nice, happy life.
Right. That's easier said than done though.
Absolutely. Especially we're both in Hollywood, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that doesn't apply to us or anyone near us.
Right. You are correct. How are you holding up though during whatever year it is?
Yeah. Let's pretend we don't know what year it is.
I'm not pretending. No, I'm pretending a little bit.
You mean during the quarantine?
Everything, man. Just in general. How you doing? You can answer however you want.
Things have been good, man. To be honest, I feel like there was a period where I was not doing a lot in the initial stages of the quarantine, like a lot of people. And then after a while, I kind of got bored and started doing maybe more than I was doing before the quarantine. I feel like I've been pretty productive, just stand-up comedy wise, and doing entertainment stuff than I anticipated being during a quarantine.
You adapt.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, again, if you're not we were talking about this before, if you're not well known and there isn't a lot of social pressure for you to adhere to guidelines, which I don't have, no one knows who I am, you can kind of do anything. It was a free for all. Like I went to Florida and did shows. I went to Austin and I've been running a show in Hollywood.
Right.
It's been and it kind of feels like all the things that could distract you from those sorts of endeavors were on hold. So you could kind of just focus on that stuff.
Dude, nothing was open. I tried to save some money. Like I would have been spending money on XYZ if XYZ was open. So I guess that's a small silver lining. And that's cool that you continue to work and find ways to work and find creative solutions. And everyone should really take their own risks and make their own decisions. But
yes,
that might be a different conversation.
Yeah. I did some stuff that a lot of people wouldn't. I mean, it's not like I committed any crimes or anything, but I definitely went to some places that people think are insane places to go, in or out of a quarantine.
Why do you hate grandma so much?
In Florida?
Anywhere. No, yeah.
Yeah. But it was, again, just from my own perspective, extremely useful time spent and pretty productive.
That's great.
and I kind of feel like I'm hitting the ground running to a degree, slowly coming out of it. But also, have you felt this way? It's a little overwhelming that things are sort of normalizing because we got so comfortable, or at least I did, so comfortable having my truncated existence during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think if you've gotten better at being your own, maybe on your own to some degree, or more on your own, or in this existence, like you become used to it. Maybe not comfortable, used to it. It's like any change, like becomes like a challenge, no matter what it is, even if it's a change for, I don't know, from being more living an insular existence to a more social one, or I don't know. It's not like we've been totally disconnected from each other. No one's interacted with another human. I'm not one of those people who didn't like hug anyone or like whatever.
Right. Good. I'm glad that we were both hugging people during the pandemic.
Yeah. We we didn't know each other. Otherwise we would have hugged.
Oh my God. If I knew that you enjoyed my sets during those two shows, I would have hugged you.
Yeah.
Before, during, and after.
Dude, for the first month, I was like wearing the gloves to Ralph's. And then I was like, wait a minute, some things don't add up. What's going on here based on what's being reported?
Yeah. And again, it's like, I'm not going to delve into conspiracies too much, but it did seem like you could go out and be okay. So I went out and was okay.
Right. And some of the people who were telling us not to go out because we wouldn't be okay were out and they were okay.
Yes. Yeah. There were,
and they're not in as good a shape as me and you, and they're older.
Yeah. There seemed to be a lot of paradoxes and, hypocritical things going on. And again, I don't think it really pays for me to analyze it too much, but what you can get from that is like, I can probably go do a set in a park and be okay.
Right. Everyone should just do whatever the hell they want. And just as long as you're not hurting anyone else, it's fine with me. But why don't we get into your life, and you could tell me a little bit about that and your background. Where are you from and your family and all that stuff, and we'll get into it.
Sure. From San Francisco originally, just outside of San Francisco, but I was born in the city. And my family's still up there, just north of San Francisco.
Brothers and sisters?
Just me. My parents had me pretty late. They were about exactly. They were 40 years old when they had me, so it was a little late to have anybody else.
And when did you understand? When did you comprehend that? You remember like, hey, you remember like wanting a sibling? They're like, no, we can't do that for you, or what?
I had a business plan prepared. I had a whole PowerPoint presentation. You're absolutely right. Like someone who I was thinking about saying that I admired and was inspired by for this episode was one of my friend's older brothers. And I used to hang out with first of all, my parents lived outside of San Francisco, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I was staying with friends in the city a lot. And I would hang out with their brothers and think, wow, it would be so cool to have older brothers who like showed me movies and
dude,
TV
you are
shows.
so right. You are so right. Like, cause my
that your experience?
I have an older sister, but I always kind of, I don't know if I wanted an older brother, but I liked a lot of my friends' older brothers. Like I don't know if I got along with them, but they were always cooler than my friends. But that would make sense though, because they're older.
No, that's what I was going to say. That was like my dirty little secret that I thought was like some horrible thought that I had when I was that age. It's like, I actually don't even like my friend that much. I like his brothers.
Yeah.
More than my friend. And then your friend matures and the brothers rub off and your friend's cooler than the brothers at some point. But when you're both in third grade and the brothers in eighth grade, that's a really cool guy to hang out with.
Yeah.
So I really wanted a brother who was that old, and that was impossible. I didn't want a younger brother.
No, that makes sense.
And sister, I bet an older sister would have been similar, but I didn't have as many friends who had sisters. It was more like kind of pining for like an older brother who was like 6 years older than me. I did really want that.
6? That's significantly
like,
older.
My best friend's older siblings were 6 and 8 years older than him, and they were the coolest guys ever.
Right, because that's not they're like old enough where it's like it's not even fun. It wouldn't even be really fun to pick on you as much because there's like that separation. It's like
Yes.
there's neither one is insecure. It's like I'm a young kid and I know you're older and whatever. So it's not like
No, that you're absolutely that was it. It was like they're not going to bully me, and they're going to kind of want to show me some stuff. They're going to want to teach me things.
they would have bullied you if they were your biological real brothers, though.
Oh, they beat the crap out of Nick, but it wasn't, I was a guest. They're not going
Right,
to beat the crap out of a guest.
Exactly. It's a whole different thing when it's not related. But what were you into as like what do you remember like elementary school age? What were you into? Like as far as were you playing sports or into TV shows?
To be honest, I was so boring. I was like, in hindsight, I always look back and think like, man, I wish I had started reading at a younger, like really getting into literature at a younger age, watching TV and movies that I like now at a younger age. And I really just kind of played sports and did my homework. And that was about it.
That's like what I did though. I don't think of it as boring though. Like you hang out with your friends, you play sports, you run around, you do enough homework to not fail out of school, even when you're young. But you wanted to be more like artistic when you were younger, it sounds like.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I feel like I got into that stuff when I was like 22, and I probably could have been into it the whole time, but I really wasn't. I loved Conan O'Brien, and that's something that's like been consistent the whole time. Maybe he could be my guy who I love. That's a possibility.
Conan's great.
But aside from like that kind of thing, like a really sort of easily accessible network TV show, I was not watching a ton of anything. Maybe it's, The Simpsons, like this stuff that everybody watches, Adam Sandler movies. But really, I was playing, basketball and baseball, hanging out with my friends, and wishing that I was in another family.
Oh man!
But not because I hated my parents, but because I always thought these other people were so cool, and who had different lifestyles and different experiences.
Your parents weren't cool?
Again, do you really like? If the thing is, my parents actually are kind of cool, but I was, when you're a kid, you never think that, you never identify. Right.
Yeah,
my parents are like actual hipsters. They're like old, very old hipsters. My dad is really into records and has like a rock poster collection that he collected when he was living in Boston as a kid. And he bought these, nickel, like Led Zeppelin posters that are, I think he'll never sell them. I probably won't.
Oh, he has, you said he has vinyl or posters?
No. So he does have vinyl records, but he has this insane collection of like rock and roll posters that you put up on a wall.
Yeah.
And he just accumulated them just going to concerts and getting the poster that came with, attendance at the concert. And he's got, his collection's probably worth a lot of money. He'll never get rid of them. He's like a hoarder, but he loves this stuff.
But Annie's a big music fan too, then I gather, because he's going to all these shows.
Huge music.
And into rock and roll stuff. What is he into?
He shifts his interests. I think when he was our age and younger, he was really into rock. And stuff that like in the 70s that was really popular. I think he went and saw the Doors in Boston and thought that was really, it's a huge deal. It was very exciting. But now he was into jazz when I was a kid. And again, when I was 7, I'm like, can you turn this crap off? This is ridiculous. And then now I'm thinking like jazz is actually pretty cool. Miles Davis is cool. And now he's really into, do you know dubstep?
It's like, not super well, but like I know of it. Yes.
Not dub, like not dubstep, dub. He's into Jamaican dub.
Right. Reggae sounds, bassy reggae stuff.
Like the origins of rap. Like they have they would have a toaster who would kind of talk over the Jamaican reggae instrumentals, and he's really into that stuff now. When I go home, he's always playing that, blasting it.
Dude, that sounds awesome. I got to hang out with your. Your family is awesome. You are in the right family. Despite
again, in hindsight, yeah, I'm absolutely.
I know.
When you're 11, you don't realize that.
No, it's Paul. I guess part of the reason I'm also asking these questions about your dad and music is because I do host another podcast. Called the Unofficial Tedeschi Trucks podcast. I don't know if you know Derek Trucks, the guitar player, or Susan Tedeschi. Derek Trucks played with the Allman Brothers.
Oh wow,
And if
that's
you're
amazing.
when he's like a teen prodigy guitar player, so he played with them in his teens and 20s, and then started this band with his wife, Susan Tedeschi, a blues singer and guitar player herself, and they added 10 other singers and instrumentalists. It's a crazy circus, this band, but I love them. And just hearing you talk about your dad and all the posters, I'm thinking, oh, this dude probably loves the Allman Brothers, can probably talk about the Allman Brothers if he's into this kind of music, I'm guessing. So maybe I should talk to this guy on
Honestly,
my
yeah,
other podcast if he's a music, like crazy music
sorry.
person.
I hold on one second.
No, you good.
There's a homeless guy on my window.
I thought it was the police.
No, just pretty much the exact opposite of a policeman.
Undercover.
Yeah, maybe. He seems okay. So really, you're just using me to get to my dad.
Right. I'm trying to book. I'm using you to book a higher profile. He'd be
honestly,
like, yeah, I know everyone in the Allman Brothers. Like,
he'd probably love to do it. Anything music related, he'd probably be up for.
That's cool. Thank you. Well, maybe we'll talk more about that. But yeah, your childhood does kind of remind me a little bit of mine being into sports. I think maybe I had a little bit more balance though. Like I remember watching TV shows and appreciating like art, and TV and movies were kind of like, I was never a buff, but I remember always consistently finding stuff that I really like loved and had probably a big impact on me too. But what about like through middle school and stuff like that? What were you into?
Again,
were you a good student?
I was a pretty good student. I kind of turned into a better student later, if that makes any sense. I feel like I was pretty much a space cadet until later on. I wasn't really thinking very far ahead. I was really just, and maybe that's a nice way to be psychologically. It was like I was happy to play baseball after school, and I wasn't really thinking about professions or I think when you're that age, I mean, you played sports, through adolescence, right?
Yeah.
You kind of think you're going to go. I was delusional in hindsight.
Oh, me too. Yeah. No, I think that I'm going to get better if I just dedicate myself. Like I don't.
Well, and you think like I'm the second best basketball player in my grade, so I'll go pro, which is crazy.
Until you keep going until the right end. So for some people, that's like, high school. Other people, it's college, small college, big college, semi. Like everyone's like that. I don't know. That's like maybe that's an American thing more than anything. Like if you play sports and you're an American kid and you're halfway decent at that sport, fucking ride that train as far as it will take you. And I don't know. We love sports and we love winning and we love the whole idea of making a lot of money playing a game. I don't know. We love it. We're into it.
Yeah. Well, and we love believing in ourselves and maybe not being so realistic. And that seems to express itself in children with sports, right?
Dude, I'm great at being unrealistic.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Absolutely. I mean, we're doing I do stand-up comedy. Obviously, I'm a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah, I love it.
What was I going to say though? Yeah, the sports were a big influence, and I loved comedy. Again, in hindsight, I should have thought more about it because I loved Adam Sandler movies. I loved watching the late shows and seeing the comics on the shows, but I never really thought about it.
Something you could do.
Yeah, I also never really thought about doing anything performance-wise. Anything. I didn't want to be in plays. I was like, that's for weird. That's for dorks. You don't.
Yeah,
I don't do
that's
that.
what I would say.
Like if someone told me they were really into doing comedy as a 13-year-old, like a fellow 13-year-old, I would have said that guy's a weird. What's wrong with that guy? That guy's so weird.
No, I would have thought that's awesome. If one of my friends was actually doing that, I probably would have thought it was good, was cool. Because I was already into like, if they were bad or I didn't like them. If I didn't like the person, I would just not like them from the start.
Yeah,
like, you're a dick. But if it was my friends
like
or someone.
If it was a really close friend of mine who was really funny, I probably would have respected it, but I would have thought it was foreign and odd because I didn't know anybody who was doing that.
I would have been jealous.
Really? I just I didn't have the ability to comprehend what that would even look like or be like to do it. Again, I kind of wish that I had, because I would have respected people who were into that sort of thing and would have wanted to do it myself if I had known what it was actually like.
Yeah, tell me about Conan. You've always been watching him like since you were a kid, just the late night show, and just always been
Yeah,
into
yeah.
it.
Well, I used to on VHS. I would record Conan and watch the reruns, and he had a sensibility that I think kind of catered to younger people. I mean, as an 11-year-old, I didn't really understand what David Letterman was doing, even though I watch it now and think it's funny and good. But Conan sort of had like almost like a childlike sensibility.
Right. Maybe that's why he's my favorite too. Now I'm thinking about this in the moment. Like Conan,
Right.
like Conan is my probably my all-time favorite late night person. Who am I putting above Conan? It doesn't mean I don't like the other guys, doesn't mean they're not talented, funny, do a great job, maybe even bigger names, more fame, whatever it is. But like Conan's like, he's like, you want to hang out with Conan. I'm talking more about him, but I should let you talk about him.
No, you're you're leading the conversation in the right direction. That's kind of what it feels like. He's incredibly self-deprecative. He doesn't make it seem like what he's doing is some lofty, crazy thing, but he's the quickest, funniest guy arguably out there. And the sketches and the content that they were performing on late night TV was just like unheard of. The masturbating bear and Triumph the Insult Dog. It was just so goofy and out of left field. It was something I could wrap my head around when I was in 6th grade, and I loved it.
Yeah, and it works for him, and it's always authentic. And
yes,
other people, sometimes talented people can be goofy, but it's not as effective. It's not as I don't know, as genuine. I think that's really what it is. Like Conan's just built up this like trust with the audience and this connection to the audience where like you buy the goofiness in a sense. You're like along for the ride.
It's pretty obvious that that's who he is, and he can't really do it any other way. And it's great. It's hysterical.
Yeah, he has a good self-awareness and sense of self.
Yes. Well, yeah, like his monologue's the best when he's bombing. It's not funny to watch the jokes work. It's funny when it doesn't go well and he says something to the audience or blames it on Andy, or that's when it's the best.
That's some of my favorite things in just seeing, being a fan of stand-up comedy and seeing those moments. And that's how I can tell, at least for me, like who's been at it a while, who can handle a joke not going well and bounce back quickly.
Yeah, it is interesting to see someone who just has the blinders on. Some people are amazing joke writers, and they really don't have they're never acknowledging the audience at all. And I always wonder, like, do they know?
They know
what's going on.
They know,
but they just don't know how to respond.
That could be it. I don't know, or they just choose not to. It's just like nothing stops this train.
Yeah. To me, that was never the way. I never wanted to do that.
Yeah, I seen you, I don't know, not bounce back, but you know what I mean. Like,
sure.
Play with the audience, when something doesn't go exactly perfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like when it's going really well, I tend to do that too. I always have it's like, how could you, I don't know how people don't acknowledge the audience at all. You have to have an awareness that they're right there in front of you and living beings.
Seems like a part of the experience.
How could it not be? Yeah. And some comics are amazing and they play the audience like an instrument and never say anything to them. But maybe it is an influence of Conan. Conan is all about the audience,
right?
Getting inside the audience's head.
Oh yeah. Did you ever see that documentary about like his tour after the whole like NBC debacle? He did like the nationwide tour, and they made a documentary about it. That was
it's Can't Stop. It's a great documentary.
Right. I forgot the name of the title, but that's perfect because like that's what I remember is that how hard and who he was like on that tour. He was like Kobe. He had like a Mamba mentality going on that tour. And I think it like scared me and jarred me a bit. Maybe just because it made me feel like, dude, you're not working hard enough. Maybe that's what it was. It wasn't so much like Conan being this Kobe Tom Brady character that made me nervous. It was more like poked at my insecurity that I don't work nearly hard enough.
It did show you like it was pulling back the curtain and helping people understand. Like, you watch Conan do his show for 30 minutes or for an hour, the old late show or the TBS show, and you think that looks pretty fun. And it is, I'm
Right.
sure it is fun to perform, but it is a ton of work, and it's nice to see the work that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm
To
sure
put it
you
in
appreciate
perspective.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, I think a lot of when you tell people you're doing stand up or attempting to do stand up, they think, oh, what a fun time that must be. And it's really a lot of effort put into it. It is like Kobe to some degree. And no comic would ever say I'm like Kobe, because that's not remotely funny to say that. But it takes effort. It takes work.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because I talk to a lot of comics. I go to a lot of shows. So I do sort of almost lose a little bit of sight and perspective on like what the average person must really think when you tell them that you're a comic. Like, they get like stupid questions like, oh, so what's your day, your real job? Or like, no, really, this is how I earn my living, or something like that. Like, just like all sorts of annoying questions, because it is, not the most, maybe not normal, but you know what I mean, the most typical profession.
Oh, it's endlessly confusing for people to rep people who aren't in the industry, and you can kind of get you can get lost in Los Angeles and think that everybody gets it. Almost
Right.
nobody gets it. Either they think it's the coolest thing ever, or they think like, how the hell do you make it? Are you homeless? Do you make any money? And also it's like, isn't it petrifying to go on after you've been on stage 50 times? It's not going to make you seize up with anxiety. That kind of goes away over time. And different shows are more nerve-wracking than others. Sure. But you kind of like, if you don't like the adrenaline of doing stand-up, you're just not going to pursue it for a very long time.
Yeah, you won't last. What about going into like high school? What were you still playing a lot of sports? I'm sure you're probably still watching Conan. Were you getting decent grades? Like, just
still watching Conan. And actually, weirdly enough, like kind of becoming a little bit more of an introvert. I don't know if you've experienced going in and out of states of really being social and being a lot less social. But I was really just a student and an athlete in high school. That was pretty much it. And I played, like, when I was a freshman, I played football, basketball, and baseball. And I thought, again, it's like inevitably one of these is going to pay the bill. It's crazy. What a crazy thought to have.
But you must have been you probably were pretty good, it sounds like.
The thing is, here's the thing. I was pretty good, but it was silly for me to think that way. That was not a good long-term thought pattern.
Yeah. That can be a tease though, if you're pretty good.
Yeah.
Because obviously, because like to be anything, you have to be like basically the best in your county and to have, or something like that.
To think that you can, and I wasn't. I was not
chance.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish someone had grabbed me by the shoulders and gone, you're not, like, you're pretty good, but you got to find something else to do, man. But I sort of had this like myopic perspective on my life. I wanted to go play a college sport. I wanted to get good grades. And that's pretty much what I set out to do. And I wish I had tried some other stuff. But again, everybody, when you say stuff like that, everybody goes, well, but it's maybe it wasn't meant to be, or maybe you learned it later for a reason.
Part of the journey or something like that.
I think that there's some truth to that. And also it would have been nice to figure things out when I was 16 to some degree.
Yeah, that's why it's like maybe good to like pass knowledge on to like younger people.
Well, and this kind of goes full circle. I bet if I had older brothers, they would have gone, dude, you're not going to go pro. You got to get a job or something. You got to figure something out, a career path.
Your parents failed. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my parents are like, go wait tables, go work at camps during the summer. But they also were supportive, maybe to a fallible degree.
Yeah.
Or at least like, let him do his thing. He's doing it. Let him do it.
Right. No, man.
They weren't telling me I was the best athlete ever. That would be stupid also. But they were kind of like, he seems to be doing well, so let him keep doing okay.
Let him find his way.
Yeah, and maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. You're not a parent.
No.
I have no idea what I would do if I had a kid in high school. I have no idea.
What do you mean you don't know what you would do? In terms of what?
Say the kid is dead set on something that I think maybe isn't the best idea. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, you know, but the thing is, like with hypotheticals, it's going to have to be a case by case basis. That's such a broad, thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Just disown your kid is always the right choice.
Yeah, well, we don't need to get into that, but that there is a family history of that.
Oh no.
Yeah, I wasn't obviously. I still have a good relationship with them.
Yeah, I always say the right thing on this podcast, just so you know.
No,
that's honestly, part of my charm.
A disownment podcast would probably be fascinating.
Yeah,
for people.
I'm trying to come up with titles for it right now in my head as we have this conversation. So but what about like through like junior, senior of high school? Did you have plans? Were you still thinking college sports and college education, or like? We'll cross the bridge when stand-up comes part of your life, but I'll kind of give you the floor to kind of like bring me through your late teens and early 20s.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, I did not have like a broad perspective on much of anything, but I was like just kind of trying to play a sport in college and do well. And I sort of thought I would do something with psychology. And actually, I realized I've said the word psychology like 8 times, which is like the worst thing you could do as someone. I've studied psychology for a bit in school. It's a little on the nose to be the guy saying psychology who studied psychology. But I was like, I'll do something, maybe like a sports psychology. That's what I was like, I like sports.
Cool. Yeah.
Psychology seems cool. Yeah. And it was, I took AP psychology in high school. And I actually ended up going to grad school for psychology.
Wow.
So that was kind of what I thought the path was going to be. And then I started, and I don't know if we want to jump that far ahead, but towards the end of undergrad and the beginning of grad school, I was thinking like, this field seems a little bit limiting and maybe like it's not the best fit for me. And it was pretty late in the game when I just decided to cut it off.
That's brave though. That's awesome though. Like it
was pretty wide. I mean, I finished my master's when I was 25. And that's when I started thinking about stand-up. I really hadn't thought about anything.
Oh, so you finished school.
I finished my master's. So I applied for a PhD out of college and only at a few schools, and was accepted as a master's student at one, and thought, well, if I do really well, it even said within their program that if you do really well, you can get your PhD here too. And I just decided to not even bother. And I didn't do that well, so it wasn't going to happen anyways.
Where did you go to undergrad school?
I went to Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, which was a good, actually a nice change of pace, living in a different part of the country.
That's cool.
Because I have a lot of family in the Midwest and on the East Coast, and I'd never even been to the South. And it was cool to live in Tennessee for a little bit.
What about stand-up? When did that become the itch?
It actually, it all sort of started, it was all very safe academic influences that made me think maybe I should try to do something like stand-up, which I don't know if you hear that a lot, but I was a TA for some classes, for social psychology classes. And I really I've heard other comics say this. It's like
public speaking.
Well, yeah, it's like you want to be a cop and you're like, I'll be the funny, I'll be the guy who's hilarious, who's works in the morgue. It's like, why don't you just be hilarious? You don't have to be that guy. So I liked giving funny lectures, and I was like, well, I'll just be the funny professor. And it's like that. You should just, I wasn't that good academically. Like I should have just focused on being funny, probably.
You weren't that good at as a student or a teacher or both?
Well, I was competent, but I wasn't like it's so competitive to try to get a professorship at especially in a small field like psychology.
Yeah.
I wasn't passionate enough about it or good enough at it for it to be a no-brainer. And I really liked, playing a clip from Eastbound and Down and then describing how that was an example of extrinsic motivation or something like that,
No brainer was a pun, I think, by the way.
Yeah, yes.
I think so, because we're talking psychology.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, I hate puns, but I spot them and
I
use them
love,
by accident. I'm
I
not
love
like
that that you said that, because I have a problem with puns too.
you don't want to say them, but you say them. Is that the problem?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. Like whenever I use a pun, I never intended to use one,
Oh yeah, always unintended.
and I don't like them to
They're
begin with.
corny.
They're so I kind of, this is like a comedy pet peeve. I hate it when people use a pun and think like, that's how good was that?
Yeah.
I hate that.
Right. It's stupid.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I'll boo the next pun. I'll boo pun next time I'm at a show.
Please come to a show that I'm on and boo a pun that I say unintentionally. Please.
Yeah. I'll just alert you. Don't do that ever again. Wow. So I don't think I've actually heard that, but you're saying you've heard other people talk about similar experiences in comedy where they go from just a profession where they're speaking that enables them to express some level of humor, and then you take it to the next logical step, which is where an open mic or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that is the next. Like,
what are you going to say though?
Well, what I was going to say is, like, I don't know exactly who I've heard say that, so I might just be like making it up or conflating a bunch of things that people have said. But
don't lie to me.
Yeah, I know. Like,
no, it's okay.
Misquoting Mark Maron or something. Who cares if I'm misquoting someone? But that was what did it. Like, I loved when also towards the end of undergrad, I took a fiction writing class. And I was, again, it had nothing to do with what I was studying. I'd already gotten into grad school. I wasn't going to school for that. And I liked it almost too much. Like, I was procrastinating on my undergrad thesis, reading and writing literature. And it just blew my mind that you could just do that. It's hard now. You can't really do that, but that, like, Junot Diaz or, anybody, George Saunders, anybody can just write a book and make a bunch of money writing and they were incredible at it. And a lot of them were funny. And I sort of liked the funny literature, and I tried to write fun. And again, if I read it now, just unbearable to read, not good. But
could it be salvageable?
Yeah, maybe. Like, there's some premises that are
kernels of goodness that might be usable or inspirations to something that you can use today, I guess is the thought.
Yes, absolutely. But the light bulb was that how enjoyable it was to try to write funny stuff. I was so engaged. I was having so much fun. And maybe part of that was because I was procrastinating on something that was distinctly less fun.
Sure.
Like doing the stats for a study.
Right.
Or something. But the combination of doing some, fictional writing that was funny and reading stuff that was similar, and kind of giving some. And I took a public speaking class that I loved. That was very intense, but I still liked it.
The perfect storm. Sounds like the perfect storm is forming.
But it all kind of formed really late. I was like 22, I think, when I was even getting a kernel of thinking about any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone's different. Everyone has their own journey and their own path. Some people start late, start early, late bloomers, early bloomers. I don't know.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with it necessarily, but it is interesting that I just had no idea that I'd be even remotely interested in any of this stuff until pretty late in the game.
So what do you remember about, like, the first time you did stand up, or was it an open mic or?
It was an open mic. Well, so yeah,
tell me about it.
Like, getting started for me was like, it took a long time, because I was like, the whole time I was like, this is kind of a stupid thing to get into.
That's what's stopping you.
Yeah, no, it really did. Like, when I was in school, I was living in Chicago, and I was like 26, and I was like, I'm going to try to do an open mic. And I was used to this public speaking class that I had in undergrad where, if you said or your grade went down a point.
That's not even a true thing anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually incorrect. If I have it correctly, and is not part of normal speech, and if you don't do it, it's awkward to some degree.
In hindsight, I completely agree. But in this class, you basically had to memorize a speech, And it was more about the way the speech was written than the actual speech, because you're just reciting something.
Fucking so dumb, but all right.
It honestly kind of fucked me up. Like I was paranoid about memorizing my set, and I like had every word of it down. Went to a bar in Chicago, and it was, I mean, it didn't even register how bad it was.
Wow.
But it got nothing. It was like me reciting the stuff with no connection with the audience, kind of in a vacuum. And I tried it, and I nailed. Here's the irony, I guess. I nailed it. Like I got every word. The speech was delivered a way I thought it should have been, but there was no connection with the audience. And I was like, this is kind of silly. Why am I doing this? And I didn't do it again for another couple of years. Really.
Wow, that's tragic. I maybe tragic. It's a sort of is.
Well, it's interesting because I was influenced in a way that was not helpful for stand-up, for something like stand-up, which is, in hindsight, I should have been trying to be as natural and organic on stage. I mean, and you saw me perform a couple of times. Like I'm pretty far from a guy who's like reciting something verbatim.
No, you're very engaged and in tune with the audience.
And that's so much more fun to do it like that. I'm not saying like it's great or anything, but it is the level of pleasure goes up exponentially if you're just like trying to connect with the audience.
Sure.
So that really, I was like, well, I tried it. That's cool. I did stand up, and how obnoxious to do 5 minutes and go, I've done stand up.
You tried it.
Absolutely. I tried to do it. And then I went back to school and was like kind of wondering what to do. And it was just sort of lingering. I was thinking about it subconsciously, I think. And then eventually I pulled the trigger and moved down to LA. That was really it.
To do stand up, you just decided I'm going for all in without really even like.
Yeah. I mean, I was home in San Francisco after I moved back and finished up my thesis, which I was like, kind of like, it was taking me a long time to do. And I was waiting tables, and I was like, I don't think that I really have anything going. I was like going to job interviews that I wasn't excited about. And then I just said, fuck it. When I was 20, almost 27, I think I was, or maybe I was 27. And I drove down to LA in my Volvo that I bought with money from waiting tables. And I slept in my car for a few months and kind of just it was a whim. And everyone I knew was like, what the fuck are you doing? Because I really hadn't said anything out loud about it. And I had nothing bringing me to Los Angeles.
Yeah, you weren't doing stand up at this point. You just kind of decided that you wanted to.
Well, I had like dabbled and really not known if it was the right fit. And then I said, screw it. Why not just like you're wasting time if you wait any longer, and you seem to still be interested in this. Why not go gung ho and see what happens? See how you feel.
There you go. So you did do a few shows in the Bay Area before you moved to LA.
Yeah. Again, like showed up at an open mic, confused, and Bay Area stand-up comedy was confusing because like people would go on stage who were like on acid. And I was like, is this even, and they would say it didn't feel like stand-up comedy the way that going to a show at the Comedy Store feels like.
Right. It's more of a freak show.
The mics were, and I was like, I don't know can I do this? Can I do, and I couldn't, but I should have realized that it was different in Los Angeles and different in New York and different everywhere else.
Sure.
So that it was sort of a slow roll. And then I moved to LA, and I haven't stopped since then. I mean, it's the best.
Yeah. Tell me about the early days leading into some highlights, and catch me up. And I'll jump in here and there.
Sure. Well, I moved down, sleeping in the Volvo, doing open mics every night. And like, again, it kind of feels like you're shooting in the dark initially. Like I didn't really know if it was the right choice for, I'd say like a couple of years. And I mean, I guess theoretically I still don't, but it feels right.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And slow, like, and also I was obsessed with comics, and I'd heard a bunch of comics, and I studied stand-up, and this is something you couldn't do in the 90s, through podcasts. I listened to so many fucking podcasts about stand-up comedy.
About the craft, or just from comedians?
Well, it all, what was interesting was I would kind of focus on the craft, but the explicit purpose of the podcast was never the craft. And they would end up talking about, like, I loved Marin's podcast. I loved Pete Holmes's podcast. And there are others who I would listen to all the time, like the Nerdist podcasts. And they, if you listen to enough of those, walking home from your job at a restaurant, you think, okay, so you started open mics and then you get better and people start putting you on shows. And then eventually you can kind of make some money. And in the longer run, you're headlining. And that, otherwise I wouldn't have known what to do. You learned
something from podcasts.
I honestly learned most of what I know about doing stand-up comedy before I started from podcasts. And it was very useful information.
That's cool. No,
yeah.
That's great. And what about getting on stage in LA in the early days? How did that go when you were kind of newer to all of this?
Yeah. Well, I guess I knew, but a lot of people don't move to LA until something brings them to LA.
Right. Yeah. A few people I spoke to have done the fuck it, I'm just moving to LA, and I've never really done this before, but
it's probably not the best thing to do in hindsight.
They say that too.
Yeah. When I go to smaller markets, I realize, I could have been featuring like 2 years in and done tons of stage time, like 20-minute sets on weekend shows. But I think that the usefulness or the good thing about going early is you don't pick up those habits, those kind of stock comedy habits that a lot of people have in smaller markets, where they sort of tell jokes that you've heard before. And this doesn't go for everybody, obviously, but there's some comedy shortcuts that people take, that if you're going up in front of a jury of your peers constantly and you're in like a hub for stand-up, you can't get away with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Broad tropes people cling to. People cling to broad tropes too long.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think starting really, effectively starting in Los Angeles kind of threw that out the window. Like
you got to up your game fast and keep up, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes. And if you're but you're right about the broad tropes. Like if you're relying on that really, everyone was doing jokes about eating ass a couple of years ago. Do you remember that vaguely?
Yeah, I don't know if were there specifically when people were doing the ass jokes.
Man, I feel like 2 years ago, 2 years ago, roughly, it was just like who doesn't have a joke that I've heard before about eating ass?
Yeah,
and I I think being here, you realize like, I shouldn't even discuss that on stage. There's no point. Yeah. And it would be a mistake if I started to talk about stuff like that. And I think in a smaller market, and I don't know from experience, but I think in a smaller market, it's probably like almost recommended, because you don't want to lose a 200 seat audience that paid to see you. I was going up a lot in front of people who didn't pay to see me, so I could experiment.
Right.
That's really the benefit, I think, of starting in a bigger market. You go up in cafes and weird shows, and most of the shows I did the first couple of years that were booked were all just like a disaster. There was like somebody wearing a priest outfit hosting it who didn't say they were going to.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, sure, that's insane. I don't even know why that was happening, but and shows in like little theaters and cafes and things. But it gives you some freedom to like mess around a little bit on stage.
Sure.
And I think that was kind of good. And again, I'm sort of learning discipline later, but I don't know if that's so bad. If the base is like lack of discipline, kind of saying the wrong thing or going in a weird direction, maybe I think that's kind of a good base to have, as opposed to like following the rules.
Right. No doubt. You want to do what brings out the most original material in you, I think. And if you come up with a joke about eating ass that you like, it's okay if you want to tell it. It's okay with me.
Yeah, it's okay with you. Thank you.
It's fine with me. But, you have the clearance from me.
Yeah. And I was really paranoid starting out about stuff like that. And now I don't really worry too much about any of that sort of stuff. But the habits that are instilled in you starting in a bigger scene where you're watching, like, I would go to the Comedy Store, and 3 or 4 years ago, the Comedy Store wasn't even that popular. You could watch, Gerard Carmichael and Mark Maron and Margaret Cho and Kevin Hart all perform one after the other.
Right.
And you can learn so much just watching great comics. And again, if I'd started in San Francisco, I wouldn't have seen anything like that.
It seeps in that like, even if you're not like taking notes overtly, just being around like people who are doing what you want to be doing and are very good and skilled at what that is, like that's the way to learn anything, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And to me, that's the biggest benefit of starting or doing stand-up in Los Angeles. You can watch the best people in the world any night of the week if you want to.
No, that's cool. What other highlights from stand-up in the last couple of years? Anything jumping out at you?
I don't know. I mean,
just love the grind.
Yeah.
Just love being on stage.
Like to be honest, like I love being on stage. I do love it, but like being able to go on the road a little bit has been fun. And I might be like a little bit of a masochist sometimes, not in necessarily a productive way. Like I went to Florida, and I posted the map that I was driving on my Instagram. Like I think I drove 1,600 miles in 6 days and did a one-nighter in all these different cities. And that does make you better to like, and also they give you more time. Like they think you're good because you come from LA, and there's no proof of that necessarily, but they think that you can do it. So you can do 20-minute sets and 30-minute sets. And I covered most of the whole state and did like, more time than I would do in a month in Los Angeles in 6 days. And that sort of thing, to me, I don't really have enormous highlights aside from stuff like that.
You push yourself.
I do like, again, it doesn't sound so cool to say like I love pushing myself, but I do with that kind of stuff.
Right. Life would be a little easier for you if you booked like one less date on that tour, probably. But you're like, no, I have to get 10 dates. It can't be not. Like just like little things like that. Is that what it is? Like
well, and it's like if I'm going, I'm basically breaking even on a trip like that. If I'm gonna go, I might as well do an extra hour if I can do that somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also this is relevant. Like starting a little late, I feel like I got to make up time.
I see. That's the psychology of it.
Yeah. I'm definitely like one of the main motivators is like I'm 31. Like I'm not if I was 21, it would be a lot easier to be complacent, I think. And I've been and the thing is like starting late, most likely you spent a lot of time being complacent, or else you wouldn't have started later.
Yeah, sometimes you don't even know you're being complacent, or you're headed in the wrong direction. Trust me, I know about all of these things that you're describing.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I don't know if that's your experience, but that kind of does haunt me a little bit. Waiting a long time.
Yeah.
Or not knowing for a long time.
We're finding ourselves. We always have to be finding ourselves.
Yeah. And it's probably not the healthiest disposition, but again, it does kind of relate back to the Conan O'Brien thing. Like that guy pushed the crap out of himself and the product was good. So there is something to it.
I predict that you are going to become more and more at peace with what we're discussing with that in the long term. Rectifying past regrets like that you can't control or whatever. Like we'll try to live more in the now.
Of success. Honestly, I heard Neil Brennan say that he was really depressed, and then he put out the 3 mics special. And he basically was like, I put it out and people liked it, and I wasn't depressed anymore. Which doesn't sound like the right thing to say, but when you do well, it does make you feel good.
Yeah, doing good work and whatever it is, and doing and bringing joy or serving other people in some way is a net win for the individual and for everyone. Always, it's like a high thing that you can pursue is good work and for yourself and your fellow humans.
Was that your experience? Because I got a lot of questions, I guess, but. Did you start later? And I saw that you went to Syracuse, which is like a great journalism school, and you're kind of doing some version of that?
I studied film at college, but I kind of like done just different things over the years and wrote scripts that never saw the light of day, and had a blog and different projects. Just always been working on different things over the years, like kind of along my journey.
And you started podcasting. You're still making films, I've seen.
Oh yeah, well, the podcasting, that's probably more in the last few years. That's like podcasting hasn't even been around
that's true
all that long. I was gonna ask about go on.
No, well, I was gonna say a lot of the people who are like the most successful podcast producers went to film school,
right?
So they have a background,
similar editing, similar narrative storytelling to some degree is
I think that's the overlap.
Yeah, I want to ask, have you ever met Conan or seen the show live or anything like that?
No, that would be amazing. He's ending the show, but I would love to see anything that he does live. That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, and what if you had a chance to like meet the guy? Like, obviously, if you saw him on the street, that might be one kind of interaction. But if you had a chance to like have lunch with him, like, how might that conversation go?
Wanted to have lunch with me, as opposed to me like forcing him to hang out with me.
He's there on his own volition. That
would be amazing. That would be amazing. Like, my problem is like I've met some people who I like really put on a pedestal, and I'm really weird and I get nervous, and I don't think it is good for either of us. Like I hung out in Norm Macdonald's green room a couple of years ago because I knew a guy who was middling for him.
Right.
And I couldn't say a word because he's like one of my idols. I love that guy.
You should probably tell him that.
I should
probably make fun of you, but even better.
I should have been brutally honest, and I was just kind of frozen. And there were tons of people in there. That was part of it.
Right.
But you know, and again, Norm didn't know who I was. He didn't. If he for whatever reason sought me out, I bet it would be a little bit more comfortable.
Sure.
I would love. Yeah, I would love that. Actually, I was just with a guy who was like stalking Larry David in Pan Pacific Park. Larry David's filming Curb Your Enthusiasm there.
Yeah, you didn't put stalking in quotes, just by the way, but I'll
well, he's it's a long story. He's not committing a crime, I don't think. He's a rapper who is obsessed with Larry David, which in and of itself is kind of interesting.
Is this is a true thing, or is this a plot on Curb?
No. This is real. This is a real guy.
He's a rapper obsessed with Larry David, and he just kind of like hangs out on the outer fringes of TV show sets.
He wants to film his own pilot that's heavily inspired by Curb. And he lives very close by Pan Pacific Park and heard Larry David was filming there. And he's bringing his own film crew to try to talk to Larry David live on camera.
Dude, this is like Bowfinger or whatever, something like that.
Yes. It probably would make for a pretty good script, honestly, something like this.
Dude, maybe we're all being played, and this is like some like Andy Kaufman 4D chess prank performance art going on.
Could be. He's kind of into that stuff, so maybe like he just shot a music video where it was a one shot where he's dressed up like the Clockwork Orange, like he's in Clockwork Orange. He is sort of into performance art a little bit. Yeah,
dude, I got to check this guy out. What's his name?
I do a podcast with him. His name is Hassan.
I see. You're part of this.
Yeah, I am now. He is with Dame Dash, is like, I don't know maybe his promoter or his something like that. You know Dame Dash, right? Maybe. He's a Rockaware guy. I think he might have discovered Jay-Z. I don't really even know. I don't know enough about this stuff to say anything, but they were on TMZ together. And so this guy is like kind of coming up as a rapper, and he's from the Middle East, and he mostly raps about that, but he is obsessed with Larry David. Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see what by the time I put this podcast out, whether he'll be in a jail cell for trespassing or not.
Yeah,
I may have to. I'll just tailor the intro or the outro to give that update.
Wow. I thought you were going to say we'll see if his new single blows up. No, we'll see if he's in jail.
Oh, that's this whole separate thing. Like that's it's all good press, I guess. Like,
yeah. It could.
Wow, a lot of stuff to follow. But I definitely appreciate your time. I feel like I've taken up too much of it, more than enough. I definitely appreciate it. It's been Been fun. If there's anything else you want to talk about, feel free to mention that, or otherwise, feel free to plug, promote, whatever you want. Tell people what you're working on. I'll kind of give you the floor to do your thing.
Sure. What is it? Ben Herwitz comedian on Instagram, and then Ben Herwitz on everything else: YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. It's all just Ben Herwitz. And HER. That will get you away from all the other Horwitzes and Herwitzes. It's a weird spelling.
Oh yeah. Well, is yours the weird one, or is it the U is more popular?
U is incredibly common, and O is very common. You don't see a lot of
Horwitz, but you will see. I guess Horwitz too. You might see that too.
You don't see. I actually did a podcast with a guy named Ben Horwitz pretty recently, which was like a alternate universe thing. But you don't see a lot of HER, so that helps the search, I guess.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, the only thing I have to plug. I mean, thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank
you.
Really
fun. I appreciate you reaching out. It's just always kind of, I don't know. It sounds lame, but like whenever anybody wants to do anything whenever anyone seeks you out for anything like this, it feels good. And I don't think people acknowledge that much.
Some people do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really do appreciate you having me on. I listened to a bunch of them. If they weren't good, I wouldn't have listened to several.
Thank you.
They're good podcasts. And that's what I have to promote, I guess. I do a podcast called Ben Bets, and this is the Bukowski thing. We didn't really get to Bukowski. He was really into horse racing, and it's a long story, but my girlfriend's dad has been betting on horse races his whole life, and he taught me his system. And I kind of got into it during the quarantine. And I have a podcast called Ben Bets that I do where I bet live on horse races that I put on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube and everything.
Yeah, do you win?
I've posted some clips where I won big, but overall, I don't want to even do the math. There's no way
That's okay.
But I do it with Hassan, who I just mentioned, and I do, I'm doing 2 or 3 a week right now, where the horse races happen over the weekends, and I'm betting during those times.
For the podcast, I see.
I'm trying to. People recommend that you niche your podcast, and I might have found too much of a niche, but I do like it.
That's true, because that's one way I've listened to podcasts about podcasts, of course.
Yeah,
that is one of the things they say. That's how you can distinguish yourself. Even if there's someone doing a horse racing betting podcast, there may not be one that's 3 days a week or whatever the case may be.
Or live, or 100% live, or any of that.
Right. Yep. You know what you're doing.
I suppose. Yeah, that's the idea. And I do have fun doing it. I mean, the idea is there's about 20 minutes between races, and you just have a free-flowing conversation, and then a race happens, and that's kind of exciting. Either you win or you lose, and then you go back to the conversation.
You have a structure.
Yeah, there's a bit of a structure, and I have a system where for betting, for placing my bets.
Yeah, a system and a structure.
Yes. There's the veil of all of that.
That's fun. Well, I wish you much luck in future races.
Thank you.
May your horses win. May everything go well in the comedy and podcasting and world for you, whatever you're working on. But I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk soon.
Really appreciate it.
Oh, you got it.
Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Later. So there you have it. My conversation with Ben Herwitz. That was fun. Ben is a funny dude, and I really appreciate his time. And I appreciate how hard he pushes himself on the road. Just be sure to breathe, eat, drink water, and get enough sleep. I am a mom now. But anyway, for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's at People We Love Podcast on Instagram. And I am at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks as always. And let's talk soon. Peace.